All right, welcome everyone to the Texas Foundations Fund webinar. I see some returning faces and some new faces. That's always exciting. This is our grant making program that's available to nonprofits. I'll kick things off. I'll do the first half, and then I'll turn it over to Anna for the second half. Pretty informal. If you have questions, drop them in the chat, raise your hand, whatever. Anna will be monitoring while I'm speaking, and then I'll do the same when she's speaking. But feel free to interrupt us whenever you want. If you want to advance the slide, Anna, we'll get this kicked off. Everybody should know us by now. We're affectionately referred to as T-Shack, a 501c3 that the state set up almost 30 years ago. And we have a pretty simple mission, and it's to address the housing needs of low-income and underserved families across the state. We do this through our programmatic areas, which we clump into build, buy, and stay. I'll start with the buy. That's how most people know about us. They've used us for down payment assistance or mortgage credit certificate when they buy a house. We've helped more than 100,000 Texans become homeowners since we started our home buyer programs almost 20 years ago. We also do development finance on the build side, mainly multifamily through our bond program, but some single family as well through our housing impact fund. And lately, we've been really involved in supportive housing developments with providing financing from that, some of which is soft equity that we provide, forgivable loans. And then lastly, the state component is we just want to help people keep stably housed. And that's where our foundations fund is included. That's where our housing connection is included. Many of y'all have gone through that training that Honor runs, where we bring NeighborWorks to Texas and they do a week of training. And then we also have all of our supportive housing work in there. The institute where we train development teams on how to build supportive housing, that we operate in partnership with the Corporation for Supportive Housing, and then also our Supportive Housing Symposium. First one we had was last fall. It was a huge success, and we'll be doing that every other year. If you want to advance the slide, Anna. So Texas Foundations Fund, some of y'all know about this program already. It is our grant-making program. We've awarded more than $9 million since its inception. The program has changed a little bit over the years, but the most recent iteration is the one that is before you this funding round, and that's pretty much been the same for the past couple funding rounds. The biggest change that we made several years ago is that it is no longer a matching funds program. You do not have to match the grant that we provide. We don't require any documentation of that. It is a straight up grant that we provide you for either home repairs or for supportive services, and we'll get into what those look like a little bit later. And also a huge change that we made is that if you have less than $2 million for your operating budget, we don't require an audit anymore. It's either a financial review or just a recommendation letter from a funder who's giving you some grant funds. And the only requirement now, this is a change for this year, is that it just has to serve people 50% AMFI or below. That is the only criteria for households that are served for our foundations fund as of this year. We removed the underserved populations criteria that we had pretty much every year since I've been here. And when you'll notice this when you fill out the application, you are not applying for a specific grant amount. We don't know how much you will get because it depends on how many applicants we get. We basically have a little less than $1 million to work with. We separate applicants into 3 tiers based on funding size. And depending on the tier that you're in, everybody gets the same amount of funding. It could be $10,000, it could be $25,000, it could be somewhere in between. I would say typically the grant sizes range from that, $10,000 to $25,000. So if you're thinking of budgeting and you're thinking about what can I contribute from our grant funds to your program budget, you know, if you're a small organization, it'll probably be closer to that $10,000 to $12,000 range, maybe 15. If you're a larger organization, it'll be upwards of 20, 25. I think a couple of years ago, we were able to give almost $30,000 to large organizations. But again, entirely dependent on how many applicants that we get. And then we always encourage people to apply as soon as possible. In the event that we have a record number of applicants, we might have to provide a cutoff. If it becomes so many applicants where the grant award is going to be de minimis, then we're going to cut off people, and it's basically going to be first come, first serve application, and we'll just pick a number and cut it off from there depending on the date. Next slide on up. So this is what we require, and this is it. To apply and to be awarded a grant, you have to be a nonprofit. You have to be around for 3 years. The program that you're asking funding for has to be around for 2 years. And then there are some certifications that we have you sign off of at the end of the application, mainly that you haven't defaulted anything on any grants on your end, that you're in compliance with what we ask for if you're a returning grantee in terms of reports being provided, and that you provide the necessary financial information. If you're over $2 million, it's an audit. If you're under $2 million, it's either a financial review or a recommendation letter. And then the last criteria being that it's got to be 50% below AMFI for the household served. The underserved populations is no longer a requirement. We can remove that going forward, but we still have that in there. And then these are the two programs that we fund, the two program areas, I should say, because they're pretty big areas. The first being home repairs, and those have to be owner-occupied homes. They can be homes that the organization owns, but typically what we see is that it's an owner-occupied home, 50% or below, commonly accessibility modifications, or roof repairs. We've seen a ton of that. Any sort of a home to make it long-term habitable for the family that lives there. And then on the supported services side, this really includes everything. Any sort of housing related services that you provide, we will fund. And that can range from foreclosure prevention, eviction prevention, homebuyer education, any sort of supportive services at a supportive housing community like case management, mental health services, job skills training. Almost anything will apply, and it doesn't have to directly pay for that program or the services that are being provided. It can cover staff costs. Pretty much anything how you want to use the funds, it's almost acceptable. And then these are the eligible expenses. Like I mentioned, this is not an exhaustive list. This is commonly how our funds are used, just for the administrative support to make the program run. And that includes if you have a repair team and they're paid, they're salaried employees, and you want to offset some of those salary costs, that's an eligible expense under your repair program. And of course, the same can be said for supportive services, like I mentioned before. And then like anything that you're incurring costs related to those programs, like for repair, travel expenses, or for anything that goes on with if you have to get a permit to do some of the modifications. So again, it's a very broad array of what we'll fund. And occasionally we'll get questions from people who are saying, is this an acceptable use of funds? And it almost always is. There are some limited exceptions, but if you're not certain, just check in with us and we'll let you know. And I will note that the administrative costs are, typically you can use you can always use up to 5% of your award for purely administrative anything. That's like 5%. We'll never ask any questions, guaranteed. If you want to go to 10%, then you just have to justify, why you're going to 10%, and you'll have the opportunity to do that in the application.
All right. So as far as the deadline goes, you will have until May 31st. That's a Friday at the end of this month. Your application needs to be in at 5 p.m. Central Time. And if you have any questions between now and then that our guidelines or FAQ document can't answer, feel free to reach out to me. My email and contact information is on our website. I'll show you how to find it all later. Once all the applications are in, we will review all of them. It'll take us a couple months to get it to the board in August, where they will approve the final 2024 partners. And then we'll go ahead and send out grant agreements to all of the approved partners and make sure that you all start getting your grant funding in whatever way you prefer, whether it's a mailed check or an electronic payment. The deadline is a hard deadline to access your funds. It's March 31st of next year. That's just when the funding needs to be out the door. But most grantees of ours want to get it as soon as possible. But just so that way y'all know, it's March 31st. The deadline to submit your final report for the funding that you receive in the 2024 grant cycle is August 1st, 2025. And that final report will be housed on the same online application portal as you all will be applying on this year. So to get to the online application, you can go to this link. I'll also show it to you on our website and how to access it from there. But we recommend starting out by looking at our guidelines this year. Just double checking your eligibility, making sure that you're not filling out an application for something that may or may not qualify. If you do have any doubts, please let me know. We also have an eligibility quiz housed in our online application that will run you through a few steps of asking questions. Are you a 501c3 nonprofit? Yes or no, etc. And it'll let you know if you're ineligible. If you do pass the eligibility quiz, you'll gain access to the full application. And from there, just make sure that you provide all of the information requested. There is occasionally a grantee that doesn't have their current year audit for, like, this year would be 2023. That's fine. Submit your previous year's audits and get us the 2023 one as soon as possible. But from there, just make sure it's submitted on time and we'll get to reviewing it. So on that note, let me go ahead and walk you through how to access the application. Okay, so if you go to our website, just psahc.org, and then you go to the Nonprofits and Government tab, under the Texas Foundations Fund listing, you'll go to Annual Grants. Once you get to that page, you can scroll down and you'll see our 2024 application. The Apply Now button will take you to the grant portal, but you'll also find our guidelines, our FAQ document, and then eventually a recording of this webinar that we're on right now. Here's my contact information. If you have any questions, reach out. But we also have a step-by-step guidelines on how to apply, just in case you all want a textual reminder of how to go about things. But on that note, when you get to our grant portal, you'll see the 2024 application. You can click in here. And if you already have an account, you'll go up to the right-hand side and click login, which I will be doing in a second. But if you don't have an account, I recommend that you register first, and it'll guide you through the process of creating an account. So that way you can apply. But first, let me log in so that way I can show you what everything looks like. All right. So as you can see, I have a bunch of applications on my end. But if you go to programs, once you're a returning user and you log in, if you go to programs, you can select the 2024 one, and it'll let you apply if you haven't created an application like I already have. It also gives you the deadline. So when you first click into the application, all you will see is this eligibility quiz task right here, at the top. So if we go through that, it'll again guide you through, are you a 501c3? We are. What kind of program type are you doing? And again, if you click none of the above, it'll let you know, hey, you're not eligible. So it's just making sure that you all know that these are the eligibility guidelines, and how to go through them. It'll guide you through it as well. But the only thing is, all of these are on our guidelines in our FAQ document. And yeah. It also asks you, like Michael kind of mentioned earlier, if you are a returning grantee, it lets you know, hey, have you submitted your 2022 final report? If you are a 2023 current grantee of ours and you have not submitted your 2023 report, that's fine. We know there's some overlap between the past grant cycle and then the upcoming one, and we won't hold that against you. So if you are a returning grantee and that's a question that you have, don't worry about it. Um, so yes, we're eligible. And so I'm going to go ahead and complete this quiz and mark it as complete. And once you all answer that, you'll be able to gain access to the rest of the application. Um, and you can fill it out, just your organization name, address, website, or no, we took the website out, but phone number, so that way we can get in contact with you. And you can also provide your personal phone and email if that's easier rather than us calling your organization's main line. It'll ask you if you're a previous awardee and what kind of counties in Texas you want to serve. We have them all listed. And we have the different program types. So I believe I put critical repair. It if you are a housing counseling like organization, that will go in the same tier as the supportive services, but yeah. Anyways, we do ask if you are um serving a special population, it's not required, but we're curious. So if for example, you are serving households that are earning 50% of AMFI or below, and they also happen to house a individual with disabilities, that you can put that there here, um, and just share more about what your program's doing. You can also do that in the program narratives section. State the mission of your organization, what you do, and the different experience that you have around Texas providing housing programs. So, again, how long have you operated the program? How many households do you plan on serving with this grant, but then also in the program, um, and how you will document that all of the households served with the Texas Foundations Fund money will be at or below that 50% AMFI requirement. And again, we give you an opportunity to say, hey, this is why we're serving a specific population of people that are within that 50% AMFI requirement. If you wanted to focus it on it, just it's an opportunity to tell us more about it. Again, it's not required anymore, but we still wanted to give you all the opportunity to share information about what y'all doing. So, um, yeah, this is an opportunity. Question 3 is an opportunity to provide more information about the program statistics, who you serve, how much, whether you're a supportive housing or a counseling program, how many people you've served, households served, and critical repairs. It might be like houses repaired and stuff like that. Whether you have a waiting list, what kind of partnerships you have throughout the community to make sure that your efforts are successful. You put them in this section here. Question 4 is just us asking, how do you document the success of your program? What kind of metrics are you collecting, demographic information? And how are you taking the feedback of the clients that you serve into account to make your program better? So we'll put that here. Question 5 will change a little bit depending on whether you provide critical repair services or supportive and or housing counseling services, but it's just you providing your budget. If you do need a sample budget for the program that you are using our funding for, you can just email me. I'll provide you with a sample budget. If not, feel free to upload your own formatting, but it'll you'll just click here and upload something. It gives you the accepted formats, whether it's PDF, Word doc, or a spreadsheet. If you need a different format, let me know. It's usually not an issue, but if you have a special case, I can try and accommodate that. And question 6 is going back to what Michael touched upon earlier. Everybody is allowed to use 5% of their grant funding towards administrative costs and technical assistance. But if you would like to request to use up to 10% of that funding towards those expenses, just explain why and what you're using them for exactly. But this is just an opportunity for you all to request that extra bit of funding towards administrative costs.
We haven't told anyone no, if you're curious about that.
Right. Um, and if you don't need extra funding, just type in NA and you're done. So question 7 is an opportunity for you all to explain any outstanding complaints, litigation, disputes that y'all may have. It's pretty rare that we do get grantees or applicants that have something, but when they do have something, it's nice to explain what's going on from your point of view, of course, rather than us just um, seeing that on your application. Um, Usually it's just an opportunity to explain the situation. Organization attachments. The section will include your 501c3 letter that you received from the IRS. I already uploaded a test document here to speed this along. But it's just, again, making sure that you all are eligible and documenting that for our records. This is the certification section that Michael touched upon earlier. You'll go through and check and make sure that this application is accurate and everything in it is truthful, that you've read the guidelines for this year and you're authorized to submit this application on behalf of your organization. You have a mission and articles of incorporation and bylaws for your organization, and you'll just go through all of these and check them. And some of them you'll see have like critical repair applicants only, or supportive services and housing counseling applicants only. So for example, if in this test application, I applying for critical repair funding. So I would click these, but I would not have to click the supportive services applicants. I could go ahead and skip over that and just do the other ones that are required for me to certify. We also have some information about HUD and the Texas Workforce Commission resources for fair housing and their laws and additional information if you are interested in accessing that. Section 5 is asking us how you promote your services throughout the community. How will you use our grant funding and make sure that it gets spent? Whether it's through social media or flyers or community partners, this is your opportunity to explain how you get the word out about what you do. And this final section is preparing us to get the money out the door. If you want a mail check, it will we'll send it to the address that you listed above in the application for the address that you have for your organization. If you are wanting an electronic payment, which is a little bit faster, that's usually the preferred method that we see applicants choose. You can go ahead and click this and you'll get a link to our vendor ACH request form. And we just collect all your banking information and you upload it again here. at the upload a file link. And that will allow us to get the money out the door quicker because our accounting department will have that on file. So once you've completed the entire application form, you can click mark as complete, and that will cross it off your list. And if you're just trying to, if it's not complete, like mine is not complete, you can click save and continue editing, and then go on to the next task. But I will say, if you are trying to submit your application at it's the March 31st deadline and you're trying to get it in, you need to make sure and that all of your tasks are marked as complete. So we've had a few grantees and applicants in the past accidentally not hit mark as complete. And the system is pretty finicky. It won't allow you to submit the application. So just if you are having issues with that, make sure that you've clicked that green button so you're good to go.
And we'll take a look at applications. And if you're 95% of the way there, or even 90% of the way there, and it looks like the only thing you have left to do is to mark as complete, we'll check in with you. We're not gonna just hope that you forget to hit that so that we don't have to fund you. No, we'll check in with you to make sure that that was just an oversight on your part or that you're about to complete it.
Right. We're not going to leave you hanging. We want to help y'all do what you do. So, but just in case you want to submit your application early, make sure you mark everything as complete. Um, there is one task that is optional and you don't have to mark it as complete if you don't want to fill it out, but I'll get to that later. So after you submit your application form, you'll go through some individual upload tasks. For example, this one, we're asking for your board of directors, for a list of all your officers for your organization, as well as any key staff members. For example, if you're applying for critical repair funding, maybe you list out your program managers there. So if you are curious as to what type of files you can upload, just click accepted formats and it'll give you a listing of that. I'm going to go ahead and upload a test file so that way I can show you. So then I'm going to mark it as complete and you'll see that it has a green check mark on the left-hand side that says it's good to go. We also are asking for your most recent financial statements for organization. These will be your organization's balance sheet and income statement, also known as the profit and loss statement. These we're asking them to be dated at the beginning of your fiscal year through March 31st of this year at the earliest. If it's more current than that, that's fine, but we're asking for at minimum those dates. And so you'll want to make sure that the dates on both the balance sheet and the income statement match, just so our accounting team can review that apples to apples, so to speak. So I've already uploaded a test document and marked it as complete. So we're going to move on to the next task, which is the financial requirements. For organizations with budget sizes that are $2 million or above, we do require that you submit the 2023 financial audit, the 2022 financial audit, as well as the auditor required communication letters for both 2022 and 2023, and the OMB circular A133 audits, if it's applicable to your organization, for both those years as well. Again, if you don't have your 2023 audit yet, but it is in progress, just give us a heads up. We will ask that you submit that audit later on once it's available, as well as the communication letter and everything else. But just go ahead and submit your 2022 audit, as well as we've had 2021 audits submitted in the past as well.
And the system's going to ask you to upload. You'll be required to upload a certain number of documents before you can move on. I think it's 4, and that's the audit plus the communication letter for each year. So if you don't have the 23 audit, What I recommend is either uploading 21 and 22, both the audit and the communication letter, and then emailing Anna separately and saying, hey, we don't have 23 yet, but this is when we'll have it. Or you can upload just 22, with the audit and the cover letter. And then for those additional two documents, you'll have to upload something to move on. You can just put a sheet of paper, like just create a Word document that says 23 audit not available. It'll be available X date or around X date, and just upload that paper twice. Just, let us know what's going on. And we couldn't really get around that part of the system. Like, you have to upload X number of documents before you can move on. So get creative. Just let us know that 23 is not available, and let us know when it'll be available, either through the system or outside the system.
Right. And so for organizations that don't get a yearly audit, and your organization is below $2 million, if you happen to have all the documents that we just discussed, and that are listed above in this task, go ahead and submit those. If you do not happen to get that yearly audit, we do accept your 2023 and 2022 financial audits as reviewed by an independent auditor, or a reference letter of support from a separate funder, who has supported the same program that you're requesting funding for this year. So again, I've submitted my test document, marked it as complete, and we'll move on to the next task. We're asking for your organization's IRS 990 form and 990T, if so applicable to your organization, for 2023. If the 2023 forms aren't available yet, again, just submit the 2022 ones, and you all should be good to go to submit the application. We also ask for a list of your government, corporate, and foundation contributors to your organization over the past 3 years. We do ask that you detail the years and amounts that were provided, that the funding was provided in for the year and the amount of funding provided, and which program was funded with which donation. We also have a program funding for sources section, and this is a list of anticipated funding sources for 2024 for this program that you all are requesting funding for. So for example, in my test application, I'm requesting funding for a critical repair program. So I would list out all my anticipated funding sources for my critical repair program for 2024. We ask that you include dates and amounts that you have requested from different funders, as well as whether each funding source is already committed or if it's still pending. So this next task is the program highlights, and it is an optional section. You don't have to fill it out. You shouldn't, the system will let you submit your application if you do not mark this one as complete. However, I like to call this the toot your own horn section, because it's really an opportunity for you to showcase all the work that your organization does and the quality of your work, and whether that's through your annual reports that you all make for yourselves, or different statistics as far as like households served and all the accomplishments that you've done, or media recognition and newspaper articles. This is a chance for you to upload anything that you want, to kind of toot your own horn. So again, you don't have to complete this section, but you may want to. It's kind of nice to be recognized for your work. So whether you mark it as complete or not, you should be able to submit the application. So once you've completed all of the tasks here, on the left-hand side, you should be able to go and click the submit button. Mine's grayed out because I didn't complete my application form, but uh, you can also review it and it'll let you look through your application again one last time before you submit it. But make sure once you are done with all the different tasks here, that you hit submit. Once you do hit submit, you should get an automated email from the system that lets you know, hey, we got it, it's submitted, and it should be time stamped. So that way you know that it's been submitted correctly. Um, that often goes to people's spam folders. So if you do hit submit and you don't get an email within however long, 30 minutes, check your spam folder. If it hasn't gone there, email me and I'll double check it for you. Just so that way, if you're not certain, I can let you know. Um, but yeah, that's the brunt of the online application. If you have any questions, you can find my email on our website and just let me know.
Two quick answers to questions that we get a lot. The first being, what if I hit submit and then I remember, oh man, I forgot something in my application, or there's a deficiency, or there's a mistake, or you think there's something wrong with the application, or we identify something that's wrong, we're not going to reject you. We have a deficiency clearing period for about a month. So once we take the initial, we'll go and do an initial review of every application in early June, and then we'll identify deficiencies, errors, whatever, and we'll give you several weeks to clear those. So if there's something wrong with your application after you submit, don't worry, don't fret, like don't freak out about it. We will give you an opportunity to fix it. The other common one is you might have seen the opportunity to apply for disaster funding through Texas Foundations Fund. That is a separate application that is available year round. We just deployed funding out of that a couple weeks ago to respond to flooding in Jasper and Newton counties. But while it's a separate program, it's all the same bucket of funds. So our board commits $1 million annually to Texas Foundations Fund. That includes this program plus our disaster recovery program. So if we are sending money out the door to respond to a natural disaster, it's going to come out of that $1 million. And it might mean, well, it will mean that there's a little bit less to go around for all the applicants in this TFF funding round. Since we just sent some money out the door, we're going to have a little less than $1 million to contribute. But at the same time, God forbid, disaster strikes in your area, you can apply for the disaster recovery program whenever you want, because the point is for us to get the money out the door as quickly as possible. And that's exactly what we did with the flooding a couple weeks ago. Supportive services applicants, do they have to own and operate housing units? No. What do we do in that situation on it? I can't remember.
Off the top of my head, I believe that you either need, if you are the supportive services provider, but you don't own the property that you're providing services at, only one of you all in the team. So if you're the supportive services team and you're submitting a grant application, then the property owner cannot go and submit a separate grant application. And I believe we need some sort of documentation that you all are working together.
Like an MOU?
Yeah. And I think that is also something that's in our FAQ document written out. So again, if you have any questions or if you can't find it and you just want to email me and ask to double check, feel free to do that as well.
The answer to your question is yes, Judy. In fact, one of our grantees, that's all they do. Texas Ramp Project, statewide, provide ramps. We love people that provide ramps, critically needed.
Hey, Anna, this is Jacob at the Denson Affordable Housing Corporation. Can I pop in with a question?
Sure.
So we would consider an application for personnel expenses for supportive services program. Likely wouldn't need the funds until December-ish. Our fiscal year starts in October 1 of 2024. In this scenario, would we be all good if we access the funds around December and then just ensure that's expended all by that August 1st, 2025 deadline?
Yeah. So we so our deadline to draw down your funds is that March 31st deadline for 2025. We referenced that earlier in our presentation, but so if you want to go back and look at our timeline once this is recorded, just to have it for your own records, feel free to do so as well. But to answer your question, yes, you all should be good to go.
Okay, so we can access the funds lump sum, but then to show it as expended by that final report? Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay,
Yeah,
excellent.
take our money by March and then report how it's spent by August.
Cool. Very good. Thank you.
May
I
I ask,
also,
go ahead.
oh, thank you. You're too kind. My name's Laura. We'd be a new applicant to y'all, and this may be better for a one-on-one conversation. So apologies, but I have a question about the 2-year program experience eligibility requirement. We've been providing scatter site, permanent supportive housing, case management for over 2 years. But we're hoping to request funding for a community, like a permanent supportive housing community case management that is under 2 years. And so the eligibility form won't let me go past that requirement. And so I was curious if y'all would be interested in hearing more about our program to see if we meet that eligibility.
You meet it. You've
Okay.
been providing services for more than 2 years?
Yes, just not
Okay.
specifically through this program.
No, you're fine.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question, easier to ask than type it up. When whatever we're asking for falls under like staff or contractors or what have you, does that go under administration or is that in some other category?
Well, can you repeat that? I didn't understand one word. That's a very important word.
Okay. In requesting funding for, say, either staff, contractors, or anything that's eligible, does that go under administration, or is administration clearly what most of us understand admin to be?
Probably what most people understand admin to be, kind of a no questions asked allocation or portion of the funds. Like however you want to use it. It can go into a general, operating budget, that
Oh,
component of it for your organization. If it's going towards to offset salary for a contractor, to offset salary or staff expenses for somebody that either you employ or that you directly contract with, that's not administrative.
okay. Okay. And if we have any questions on that, if it seems like a fine line, we can just call Anna, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any other questions?
Oh, I have another one. If
Okay.
the 2-year thing, as far as experience understood, if we have more than 2 years, but it was a few years ago, is that okay?
Yeah, it's like interrupted, like it went away and then
Yes,
it came back.
yes.
It's 2 years cumulative.
Okay. Very good. I don't even know how many years ago it was, so. Okay, thanks.
All right. Any other questions? We still have a couple minutes. If not, I'll go ahead and give you all the time back. Again, my email is on the website. Some of you all may have it already, but feel free to reach out via email or phone. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may or may not have had during this live webinar.
Thanks so much, everyone.